Biology Unit 2, Chapter 3 Organization of Living Organisms. If we took human as an example of multicellular living organisms, human body, composed of many systems integrated and organized together, forming body. As the circulatory system consists of the heart, blood, and blood vessels. Organs, composed of a group of tissues that work together in an organized form to perform certain functions. As the heart consists of a cardiac muscular tissue, nervous tissue, and connective tissue where all of them collaborate together to pump the blood from the heart to all the body parts. Tissues, composed of a group of cells that are specialized in their work, so it has more than one type. As the muscular tissue of the heart wall, which consists of a group of cardiac muscular cells. The tissues may be simple tissue, compound tissue. The simple tissue consists of one type of cells. Consists of cells that are symmetric in the structure, shape, and function. The compound tissue consists of more than one type of cells. And now we will talk about the plant tissue. Parenchyma tissue. Description: a living tissue whose cells are characterized by the following: oval and round shape. There are spaces, intercellular spaces, between them for aeration. Contain chloroplasts or leucoplasts. Contain one big vacuole or more that is filled with water and mineral salts. Site of presence, as in potato tuber. Functions: perform the photosynthesis process. Store nutrients such as starch. Responsible for aeration. Collenchyma tissue. Description: a living tissue whose cells are characterized by somewhat rectangular shape. Their walls are irregularly thickened by cellulose. Site of presence, as in parsley stem. Function: supporting the plant by acquiring it the suitable elasticity. Serenchyma tissue. Description: a non-living tissue whose cells characterized by their walls are thickened by lignin substance, in addition to cellulose. Site of presence, as in a pear fruit. Function: strengthening and supporting the plant by acquiring it the hardness and elasticity. Compound tissue. Divided into two types whose function is transportation. They are xylem and phloem. Xylem tissue. Structure: consists of vessels, tracheids, parenchyma cells. Vessels are tubes, each of them made of vertical row of cells, where the protoplasm and transverse wall were disappeared. Lignin substance was deposited on the inner surface of their walls from inside. So, these cells are converted into long wide vessels. Through them, water and salts are transported and their length ranges from few centimeters to several meters as in high trees. Tracheids. Each of them composed of one cell, where the protoplasm disappeared from them. Their walls are lignified. Functions: transporting water and salts from the root to the stem, then to leaves. Supporting the plant. Phloem tissue. Structure: consists of sieve tubes, companion cells. Sieve tubes originate from a vertically compacted cell above each other, where their nuclei disappeared. their separating walls become perforated and called sieve plates to allow the passage of cytoplasm through them in the form of cytoplasmic strands. Companion cells. They are living cells that located adjacent to the sieve tubes to provide them with required energy to perform their function. Function: transporting the nutrients that resulted through photosynthesis process from the leaves to other plant part. And now we will talk about the animal tissue. The animal tissue can be differentiated into 4 basic types: epithelial tissues, connective tissues, muscular tissues, and nervous tissues. The epithelial tissues can either be simple or compound. The simple epithelial tissue means that it consists of one type of cells, and the compound epithelial tissue means that it consists of multiple types of cells. The simple epithelial tissues have 3 types and can be differentiated from each other by the shape of the tissue. The first one is simple squamous tissue. It's only one layer of flattened cells. This type of tissue can always be found in the respiratory system and the walls of the blood capillaries. So, the function of the simple squamous tissue is secrete mucus to keep the cavity moist and smooth as in the trachea, allow gas exchange as in the alveoli and the blood capillaries. The second type of simple epithelial tissue is simple cuboidal tissue. The simple cuboidal tissue, as you can guess from its name, it has a shape like a cuboid and can be found covering the kidney tubulus. The third type of epithelial tissue is simple columnar tissue. The simple columnar tissue has a shape like columns and can be found in the small intestine and the stomach and most parts of the digestive system. The second type of simple epithelial tissue is compound stratified tissue. So, the compound tissues, it means that has more than one type of cells in the tissue and normally has more than one layer. And this type of tissue can only be found in the skin epidermis. So, the function of the compound tissues is protecting the cell, which they cover from harm, drought, and microbes, and can only be found in the skin epidermis. And with that, we finished the first type of tissue, which is the epithelial tissue, and we'll head to the second type. Connective tissue is the second type of animal tissue and can be divided into 3 types according to the kind of intercellular substances: fluid, semi-fluid, solid. The connective tissue is made up of somewhat distant cells immersed in an intercellular substance that may be fluid, semi-fluid, or solid, and they are divided into 3 groups. 1. Connective tissue proper, semi-fluid. It's the most widely spread type. It gathers between being fairly solid and quite elastic, semi-solid. The main function is to bind different tissues and systems of the body together. This type can be found between the intestine, holding it together, keeping it from tangling. 2. Skeletal connective tissue, solid. It includes the bones and cartilages. It contains a solid intercellular substance in which calcium precipitates in case of the bones. Its basic function is supporting the body. Vascular connective tissue, fluid. It includes the blood and lymph. It contains a fluid intercellular substance. Its basic function is to transport digested food and excretory substance. And with that, we finished the second type of animal tissues, And the third type is called muscular tissue. The cells of this tissue are known as muscle cells or muscle fibers. They differentiate for the rest of the body cells with their ability of contractions and relaxation. And there are 3 types of muscular tissues. Smooth muscles. They are composed of unstriated involuntary muscle fibers. They present in the walls of viscera such as the wall of the digestive canal, urinary bladder, and blood vessels. The second type of muscular tissue is skeletal muscles. They are composed of striated voluntary muscle fibers. They are usually connected with the skeleton, such as muscles of the arms and legs. The third type of muscle tissue is cardiac muscles. They are composed of striated involuntary muscle fibers and present in the heart wall only. They contain the special parts called intercalated discs that bind the muscle fibers together and make the heart beats in a rhythmic way and a functional unit. And the last type of animal tissue that we have in this chapter is the nervous tissues. The cells of nervous tissue specialize in receiving sensory stimuli, whether they are internal or external to the body, and connect them to the brain and the spinal cord, then transmitting the motor impulses from one of them to the effector organ, muscles or glands. For example, when you fall off your bike on your hand, you feel pain in your hand. Due to that, the brain received the info about the damage from your nervous system and sent an impulse to your hand through the same nervous system so that you feel hurt. And with that, we finished Unit 2. So, to recap over the 3 chapters that we studied, in the first chapter, we talked about the cell theory and the list of scientists that discovered the cell and learned about microscopes and how to differentiate between them, and we learned about different types of cells. In the second chapter, we learned about the plant cells and its components, and the difference between the plant cells and the animal cell by the internal components of the cells. And in the third chapter, we learned about the animal tissues, that there are 4 types of tissues: epithelial tissues, connective tissues, muscular tissues, and nervous tissues. And each type can be divided into a number of groups, and we also learned about the function of each tissue and what they do and where can we find them.